President Trump will dump Vice President Pence, I guarantee it. This is Scott Ott with Right Angle with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com and by our friends over at the Patriot Post, who are offering, along with their fantastic subscription, which I believe is no charge as well, a free primer on American liberty. It's the Patriots Primer on American Liberty that ties together your principles with American history in a way that is easy to understand and to explain to others, especially for young people. We'll put a link in the description below so you can check that out. Make sure to get yours today. Gentlemen, there was a panel discussion at the American-Israeli Political Action Committee annual meeting, and one of the panelists was political consultant Paul Begala, who's also a talk show host on Crossfire, I believe, and he was asked to make an audacious prediction. And he said, this isn't a prediction, this is a guarantee. President Trump will dump Mike Pence from the 2020 ticket, replace him with Nikki Haley, and he will do that on July 16th, Thursday, July 16th, the very day that the Democrats name their presidential nominee, in essence, to try to upstage them in doing that. And he will do it under the pretense of having given Mike Pence the responsibility to manage the federal government's coronavirus response and predictably botching that he will have a reason to say, no, we're not going to keep him around. This sounds like an elaborate conspiracy theory, but Paul Begala is not a complete idiot. He's an idiot in some ways, but and there's certainly, Stephen Green, some appeal to this notion that President Trump would be able to upstage the entire Democratic National Convention. Is there not?
Well, okay, number one, I wouldn't put it past Donald Trump to try and upstage the Democratic National Convention because he's a showman, and that's just kind of what he does. I don't know if you remember this, but back in 2008, John McCain, one of the lamest candidates in Republican history, did something similar during the DNC. The McCain campaign let it be known that there was going to be some McCain TV spot that was going to come out the same day that Obama was supposed to get the nomination. And it was, oh, what's he going to do? What's he going to say? And instead, in just maybe the warmest act, because he's was a cold, kind of callow guy. I could tell you a couple of John McCain stories that just piss you off. But in this very warm, short ad, he said, let's put our differences aside for this night, and I congratulate you, Barack Obama, getting the nomination. I'll start fighting you again tomorrow. Of course, he never really started fighting again, but that's neither here nor there. So I would not surprise me. It's not unheard of, any of that. That said, Begala, who's an old Clinton hand and really one of the nastiest pieces of work in Washington over the last 25 years, 30 years, he's running with this meme that the Trump administration has been bungling the response to coronavirus and that they're going to need a scapegoat, that they're going to need a fall guy to blame for everything going wrong, except that's not the case at all. There's a great piece at Legal Insurrection late last week by, I believe, I hope I get her name right, Leslie Easterbrook, who's a biochemist who was detailing all the steps that the Trump administration is taking, going, wow, this is really good. This is what you do. There was another gentleman, I think at NYU, that hotbed of conservative thought, who said this is the best response he's ever seen to an outbreak that the Trump administration is doing. But Begala's not that bright. He sees the conventional wisdom that Trump's bungling the thing, or he's stupid enough to push the meme, which is contrary to all reality, and saying, well, golly, if I were Donald Trump and I needed a fall guy because I'm so stupid and ruining this, who would I blame? But no, it's just a giant crock, Scott, based on a bunch of nothingness.
Now, Bill Whittle, that whole thing about the putting Mike Pence in charge of the coronavirus response was really just kind of a pretense for doing what Begala thinks that President Trump will want to do in order to win more suburban moms, with the theory that President Trump is weak with that sector of the American public. So kind of setting aside the timing issue of it, as well as the whole coronavirus sub-thread of this, what, if any, would be the advantages of setting aside your first-term vice president and picking up somebody new going into your reelection season?
get to that in just a second. There's just a couple of foundational things that you talked about I'd like to address first. First of all, you can say that Begala is not always an idiot, and that's true, but that's the way to bet. So the whole premise is not exactly based on science or anything along those lines. I think before I get to that aspect of it, first of all, Mike Pence seems to be the only member of the Trump administration that I personally have never seen Donald Trump get into the slightest bit of friction or conflict with. This is just me, but I'm not aware of it. I have a very high regard for Mike Pence, and I think Mike Pence does a difficult job, and I think it does it well. And he does it well. But I think looking at the Pence vice presidency, it's hard for me to imagine a more loyal person than Mike Pence. Certainly, we have seen other people come and go during the course of this administration, and some under happier circumstances than others. But Mike Pence has been just a rock. I mean, he's just been rock solid. And I don't see any personal reason why Donald Trump would do this. And I don't think Donald Trump is this kind of guy who just cuts people loose. I think he rewards loyalty. And I certainly think he's gotten both loyalty and confidence from Mike Pence. Yeah. So that's number one. Number two, the idea that Trump would do this in order to increase his election chances, I think is a kind of a fallacious idea. I can shorten this argument by saying I don't think he's going to dump Pence for Haley because he doesn't have to. He just doesn't have to. That's the mark of a guy who's trailing, who needs some kind of a boost, the same kind of boost John McCain got when he selected Sarah Palin in his running mate. But Trump is not only, I think, in a very comfortable position. Joe Biden's strong showing in South Carolina prolongs the agony for the Democrats. If nothing else, it may be over by the end of Super Tuesday. We record this the day of Super Tuesday. But my point is Donald Trump doesn't need it. He doesn't need a gimmick in terms of his ticket. Now, doing something to upstage the DNC, now that's a fabulous idea. I wouldn't be surprised to see that, but I don't think that dumping Pence is doing it. And then from the raw, sheer political calculation of it, I happen to like Nikki Haley. I've heard anecdotally that some people who are viewers of the show don't. That's fine. We're entitled to disagree about that. But my point is, it's not necessary. And if you were to dump Mike Pence for no reason, I think you'd actually do more harm than good. Virtually every conservative that I know, and in fact, a lot of people who are more reluctant Trump supporters are reassured by the presence of Mike Pence, who is, I think, unquestionably a rock solid old school conservative. And one of the things that many people felt during the whole impeachment goat rodeo was, what is the worst case scenario here? And the worst case scenario is President Mike Pence. And okay. So I think the whole thing's kind of nonsense, Scott. I don't think it deserves any serious attention. I think it's a guy who's, looking for a headline and got it. But it does, I think the reason we're doing this as a topic is to look at what he claims the motivation is. Trump, I don't think, is going to need an electoral spectacular gimmick to stay ahead and have a chance to win the race. I don't think he needs to dump Pence. I don't see any reason why he would personally want to dump Pence. I think Pence has been the definitive, loyal, efficient, and effective vice president. And I agree completely with this whole idea that he's looking for somebody to hang the COVID-19 thing on. Just for our viewers, you'll hear this from me a lot in the next week or two. I'm just going to call it COVID-19 because there are many, many different kinds of coronaviruses, and I don't see any reason to increase the confusion on this one. The idea that we need to have somebody to hang for the response to COVID-19, I think is nuts. COVID-19 is an influenza variant, and influenza is by far the most difficult infectious disease to contain on the planet. That's the bad news. The good news is the mortality for COVID-19 is exceedingly low and localized and so on. I'm not going to get into that later. I'll try to do a special video on that. But my point is this. Even if COVID-19 completely breaks out and is infected by everybody, you're really going to have to ask yourself if this Democratic strategy of blaming this on Donald Trump is really going to work. Donald Trump is the one who's been tough on China. Donald Trump is the one who has been constantly saying, we need a secure border. We need to stop kissing China's butt. China is not a an adult player in the world community. I don't think it's a big mystery that COVID-19 has come from China. I don't think it's a big mystery that the Chinese government botched containing the virus when there was a chance to do so because they found it embarrassing. And if they really want to say that Donald Trump now is in the pocket of the Chinese and got on Air Force One and managed to fly into Wuhan and, and pick up some sputum samples and mix them up into a milkshake and then distribute them to American citizens. If that's their actual argument, and it is, then it's yet another example of how tone deaf this Democratic Party is, how obsessed with Donald Trump they are, how poor their own candidates are. And not only are they two weak candidates, because it's starting to look like it's Bernie and Biden, and after Super Tuesday may just be Bernie. But my point is this: both of these candidates individually are unelectable, and they're going to be at war with each other. So they got nothing except for Trump, and they haven't gotten Trump with Russia. They haven't gotten Trump with Ukraine. They haven't gotten Trump with any of the stuff. And if they think they're going to get Trump with COVID-19, they're in for another enormous backfire surprise. And as I like to say, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people.
Well, there's an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And certainly the Mike Pence vice presidency, as Bill and Steve have both pointed out, has no breaks, no cracks, no leaks, no difficulty. And so it just doesn't make any sense on the face of it for Paul Begala to say something like that, other than he knew it would be a provocative statement. And frankly, I do kind of love the genius of doing some kind of major news item the day that the Democrats name their nominee at their convention and thus take the spotlight off of them. And I don't put it past the president to do that. In fact, I fully expect him to do that, but there's no need to do it in this case. There are three other arguments, really. Number one, Nikki Haley, not interested. That's not to say she would turn down the president if he offered such a thing, but she seems utterly competent and independent in her own right and doesn't need to have the prop or the crutch of the vice presidency to elevate her profile in the American public. She's been successful at everything she's put her hand to, and so there's no reason for her to want to engage in that and take the focus, frankly. Reason number three, Donald Trump would never do this, to take the focus off of Donald Trump and put it on a personality who's a much bigger personality than Mike Pence. Nikki Haley is a significantly more camera-friendly and microphone-friendly character than Mike Pence is. Mike, in many of the most positive ways, is a boring man. And it's exactly the kind of guy you want to have as vice president. And as Bill indicated, some people who didn't know what to make of President Trump before he was President Trump, when he was running, were significantly calmed by his naming of Vice President Mike Pence as or Mike Pence as his running mate. That said to a lot of people, hey, this guy's not completely crazy. This was a good choice. So all in all, I think Paul Begala was making a provocative statement. I don't think there's any risk at all of this happening. The only way Nikki Haley becomes vice president is if Mike Pence decides he'd like to spend more time with his grandchildren. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members of BillWhittle.com and our friends at the Patriot Post for making this possible.